Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another Star Wars video. Before we begin, I'll be starting a brand new Empire at War campaign with the Legends New Republic tonight over at my second channel, X2. We'll be playing the Thrawn's Revenge mod. It's really great and I hope some of you guys will check it out. Anyway, earlier this year, the art book for the Rise of Skywalker leaked online. I think it was published early in some countries, and we got a brief look at some pages, but not the entire thing. When it came out, I made a video about some of the new Star Destroyer models which were considered for the new film, but which didn't obviously make an appearance. Well, I wanted to come back when the art book was fully released, but to be honest, I just forgot. I bought it, and I didn't remember to go back and make all the videos I wanted to. However, I was reminded today by a tweet made by Phil Shostak, so I thought it'd be a cool time to look at the dreadnought that could have been, but ultimately wasn't. And let's turn to the tweet first, which I believe actually has one photo that's not even in the art book. Anyway, James Klein explains that, well, it would seem obvious for Kylo Ren to have his own Super Star Destroyer, because, well, Grandpa, i.e. Vader, had one. Aside from the one design there, which we'll come back to and which I quite like, we also have one with a split hull, almost like a double-decker Star Destroyer, and we have one that looks like an early concept art from TFA. I've covered both of these in the past, and if you're wondering why there's Imperial Star Destroyers next to the first one, that's just because they're using assets that they have available. It's just internal art. Then we get to this Star Destroyer, and basically they talk about how they're playing with what Kylo's version of a Star Destroyer could be. I thought going really long and sleek like the Executor would be interesting, but it's also a bit like his Last Jedi TIE Fighter. Kylo Ren has his own aesthetic, and that's true. The ship is very jagged and sharp, and that does sort of feel like something Kylo Ren would have, but it's also got that bit of a superstructure at the end which kind of reminds me of Kylo Ren's crossguard. The way the command deck is elevated is also quite similar to the Mandator 4, and if you look at it from the back, it also looks a lot like the Supremacy. So when you take those aspects and the general shape, which is very resurgent-like, we get a ship that looks very, very good within the First Order fleet, at least in my opinion, but also looks unique to Kylo Ren. I mean, the thing looks like a shard of glass or something. It's just really cool and very visually stunning. We see a slightly altered version below, which funny enough kind of reminds me of that goofy fan ship, the Imperium Ultra Class Super Star Destroyer or whatever. And I definitely think the first one with its sharp edges is a bit more appropriate for Kylo Ren, although I do like both. However, ultimately, as James Klein talks about in the little blurb there, they did in the end just go with the Force Awakens Star Destroyer, which in my opinion is pretty disappointing. I mean, why not get a new ship in there if you can? But there was more than just an exterior design done for the ship, there were also interiors as well. Some of this was actually used in the movie. For example, we get various designs for the conference room, which could easily fit into a Resurgent, but we also had new bridge designs, which obviously could not be changed because the Resurgence's bridge had already been established. A lot of these interior shots and the art that goes with it are quite nice. I like Kylo's room, but it just would have been cool if we got something new, especially where Kylo's ship plays a relatively big role in the movie. I mean, there's an entire action sequence within it. Other than that, there is some more cool stuff within the art book, but there's also a lot missing, and it really speaks to how this film was put together in a super haphazard way. I mean, there's no concept art at all of Palpatine. There's very little of other designs for Imperial Star Destroyers or the Zeiston. We don't get much of the Rebel fleet or anything like that. But for some reason, we get 5 pages on Kijimi and the Endor water planet and wherever else. Anyway, there are a couple more things I wanted to mention. One of them is this shot of a First Order factory, and it's kind of ingenious because it's essentially the First Order logo with the Star Destroyers being those interior teeth. But even here, we know that there's a bit of confusion because it wasn't the First Order that had these massive factories. It was the Imperial Loyalists, and it seems like at one point the distinction between these two separate factions, the First Order and the Sith Loyalists or the Final Order or whatever else, was a little less prominent, and they may have even been the same faction. Later on though, we also get other looks for Kylo Ren's hangar, and it was envisioned that it might actually be at the top of the ship, just because JJ thought that the side view with just the starfield wasn't very interesting, and I do agree. having a hangar like this would have been completely new and very cool, but I don't think it really matched what they wanted for the action sequences. And again, we also see that this is Kylo Ren's hangar, but he's going to a legion of Sith troopers, and again, the Sith troopers have First Order design, so something really got messed up as the movie was being made. Aside from those cool factories, we can tell that Exegol was at some points very different. There was an idea that instead of the Star Destroyers just being buried, that they would emerge from these giant factories or foundries, which would have been a very cool image. And it also seems like the battle for Exegol was at one point going to be much different, at least in color tone, taking place at sunset, or at least with this red hue, which I would have massively preferred. And we did see some of that in the first teaser. The final thing I want to mention, and I'm only going to touch on this, is I also did spot, of course, some unlicensed fractal sponge artwork in this book, because of course, I'm not sure if I want to make a full video on this, but yeah, for this concept piece, we can see that Fractal's Procurator, I never know how to say that correctly, his Star Destroyer is used as a stand-in. Now, this is something that happens with his models a lot because they are very, very high quality. I don't think he's got a huge problem with it, or at the very least, he's used to it by now. I will say it makes sense that they would use whatever, especially for internal design. However, I do think if you're going to include something in the last page of the art book, and it's going to be a big full-color photo attributed to someone, you should at least mention where the actual design of the ship comes from. But that's just my opinion and sort of off topic with the rest of the video. I don't know, maybe more about this in the future, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you thought of the new potential Super Star Destroyers. Was there one in particular that stood out? What do you think of the art book in general if you own it? And should I do more on the art book in general? Anyway guys, I hope you have a great day. As always, this has been your host Eck. Have a good one, and may the Force be with you.